So, I am going to talk about this happens to be our app, but ignore that. I'm going to talk about Blacklight range limit plugin because someone asked people to talk about plugins. I was like, oh, I've been working on this for the past 3 weeks. Let's talk about it. So, the Blacklight range limit plugin, some people call it the date limit plugin. It's actually not about dates. It's really an integer limit plugin, but people frequently use it for years, which are integers. People have sometimes wanted it to be about dates with granularity more than a year. Not a feature it has, although it would be nice. It's really a range limit for integers. Um, and here's what it looks like right now. It's got a little histogram. Oh, this isn't a very good example. Let's drill down to something more interesting where we don't have just one big bar. So, right, we can see like the distribution of the results on a histogram, and we can also have some people have seen this, some haven't. So it's just a brief review. Um, and we can limit right now on this one, you can this thing's a little bit interactive. I was dragging on this thing to limit further. And now we see, oh, look, here's the distribution. So this is cool. This has not worked with Blacklight 8. This is like, and this, I actually wrote the original version of this thing like 14 years ago and then didn't work on it much for 10 years myself. And other people in the community kept it going, which is amazing. But there's some old code in here, right? Like Blacklight was really different back then. JavaScript's really different. There's some old code in here. So I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen because mostly I just wanted to share this so everybody knew what we were talking about. And so it didn't work with Blacklight 8. In fact, because of weird JavaScript things. My stakeholders where I am were like, gee, we really want that. We want that going forward. So they said, Jonathan, yes. I was like, it might take me a month or two because this is some old code. And they said, great, spend a month or two. So that's what I've been doing. And what I've done over the past 3 weeks is this was sort of an experiment, right? Part of it I'm bringing to the community because this doesn't have to be a Blacklight range limit plugin. It could end up being my fork because I've made some choices. I rewrote the JavaScript from scratch. The old JavaScript used jQuery, used all these weird dependencies, completely threw it out, rewrote the JavaScript from scratch, which also means the first alpha version, at least, is going to have fewer features. Oh, sorry. I didn't prepare this very well. I'm glad I have 10 minutes. Some people, it's worth saying, what's unique about that Blacklight range limit plugin is that little histogram graph that I showed you. Some people have found a way to have just the date limit with the start and finish boxes without using that plugin, especially in Blacklight 8. Some people are doing that. I haven't done that. I'm not familiar with it, but my stakeholders were interested in the histogram. So really rescuing the date limit plugin is about rescuing that histogram, that graph. If you don't want the graph, there might be ways to do it without the plugin that I can't speak to because I don't know about them, but I know other people in the community do. So I'm trying to rescue the plugin for that histogram. Rewrote the JavaScript from scratch. It now uses chart.js. That's its only dependency, but it has dependency on chart.js, which is a popular charting thing. And that's its only dependency. Doesn't need jQuery, doesn't need anything. The original alpha version is going to have fewer features, right? It's going to have the histogram. It's not going to have that slider bar. The histogram isn't going to be interactive at all. You're not going to be able to drag on it or hover over it. It's just going to show you the histogram. It was very close to being accessible already. It will be accessible in the sense that there will be a screen reader only list of each, like those bars in the histogram. They'll have the bars in the histogram. There's a text only one where it lists them all in text, like 1900, 1910, 4 objects, 1910, 1920, 0. That was kind of there already. It just wasn't marked up quite right because it was written 15 years ago when there are different standards for things. So since I'm now marking it up right to be there, or visibly if you want, configuration wise, if you wanted those things on the screen. But yeah, it's not going to have a lot of the features for the first alpha, but it will be rescued to work with Blacklight 8 or 9. It will also, what I'm working on, it's not, we have all these different ways we support JavaScript, and I'm trying to work on supporting most of them. It is not going to support legacy sprockets, where all you're using is sprockets. It's modular ESM JavaScript that legacy sprockets doesn't do, but it will support, and I actually have passing in CI already for the little proof of concept, import maps with sprockets or propshaft. And Blacklight itself doesn't officially support this, although I hope to talk later about this. It also supports any JS bundling Rails or Vite Ruby with import maps or sprockets and has many combinations of those in CI passing as of this week. And at this point, I've spent probably a week on the actual JS, and 2 weeks on trying to figure out CI for all these different ways of doing JavaScript and interfacing with Blacklight. And in the process, found some things with Blacklight that needed to be fixed. At the same time, Justin Coyne was working on some of the same stuff, so it was convenient. Um, and I have some more stuff I want to contribute to that too. And it's just become, as we know, making it all work with the different JavaScripts has been more work than actually just writing the JavaScript. But I've done a bunch of the work and plan to continuing the work, and I'm feeling good about it. So it is going to lose some features and have different JavaScript things. It's definitely going to be a new major version of Blacklight range limit if we decide to go with that, meaning I'll also get rid of all the deprecated stuff. Right now, I'm doing all this in like one branch and one PR because there was like so much stuff to change, so much technical debt. It was just too hard for me to figure out how to separate into really specific PRs for people to review. And I just had to do like a spike on it in one branch. That's what's going on now. But at some point I would like to switch to a more regular one feature PR thing. But to get started, I had to just do like a spike on it to do it. Hopefully I would like it to be like Blacklight range limit 9. If for some reason the community didn't want that, then I would fork it to be my own thing because it's kind of a fork. But since the alternative is no one was doing anything and isn't working on Blacklight 8 or 9, I think the community will like it. But this is my presentation, let you know what you're doing and get feedback. And any of it could be okay with me because I'm doing the code. I'm going to use it either way. But I have done a bunch of extra work to get CI passing with all those different ways of JavaScript, some of which we don't use, hoping this will be useful to the community. So that's that. I don't know how much time I took or if we have time for any questions.
We do have time for questions, about 2 or 3 minutes. So if anyone has questions, we could just do that now. There's good comments about your work coming in Slack.
I see Benjamin. Is it useful to continue calling it BRL or is it just V1 of a different plugin?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
I
very
think
similar. It does the same stuff as before. It's just missing some features that can be added back in. I would like it to be a community thing, not just a me thing, to have, the community has kept it alive for the past 10 years when I wasn't developing it. I don't care what it's called. I think if we call it something different, as far as I can tell, there will be no further version of Blacklight range limit if this isn't it. I spent a lot of time being like, is anybody else planning on working on this? Found no one that was planning on working on this, is why I reluctantly decided to spend 2 to 3 months of my time and get the permission of my employers to do that, because this is the only way I saw to save it. So if people feel strongly about giving a different name, that's fine with me. I don't think Blacklight range limit is going to have any future other than this, though. And I would hope the new thing with a different name would still be a community thing, not just a me thing.
yeah, to be clear, I'm not trying to suggest that that it shouldn't be a community supported plugin. I mean, of course, that is always contingent on community support, but it's just to say, when I hear someone say, I'm doing this work and I have it in one branch and it's basically a total rewrite, and also it's a major revision because the features are different, maybe the programmatic API is a little bit different. I start to wonder what value you are getting out of saying it's Blacklight range limit 9 instead of just saying, if you like a histogram plugin, I wrote like, here's a histogram plugin.
Yeah, I have no strong feelings. The back end is almost exact. I'm not doing much work on the back end. All the stuff I'm doing is on the JavaScript. And some of the front end features require JavaScript that I haven't gotten to yet, so that's why they disappear. But the back end at the controller level is exactly the same as the previous version. So that's why, to me, it makes sense. If people know how to configure it in the back end, that's the same. Things you set up in Solar, that's the same. But whatever the community wants. If the community wants us to have a different name, I mean, it's the same work I'm doing either way, whether it's in a branch and will be version 9, or whether I put it in a different repo and we version 1 with a new name. I'm doing exactly the same work either way. It's going to work exactly the same either way. Whatever the majority of the community wants is fine with me. To me, it makes sense with the same name, but that's just me. Any other questions or feedback or comments?
I have a quick question. You said the histogram is going to be the one feature that's going to stay.
Mhm.
What other features are going to not stay? Like,
Yeah. So initially, just because I haven't had time to do it, right now there's a feature where you can click view larger to get the histogram in a larger modal, and making that work with the different versions of Blacklight and different ways, different versions of Bootstrap. It's just something I haven't figured out yet. So the first alpha version won't have that. There's also a feature right now when you hover over the histogram, you get a tooltip telling you the category and the count. That won't be in the initial alpha. And there's also a feature where you can drag or click on the histogram to define a range, and that won't be in the initial version. The histogram won't be interactive. So those are the features that aren't going to be, at least in the first alpha. I'm not sure if I will have time to do them at all in this particular long sprint that I'm doing, but they can always be added in the future. That's the question. That's the answer to what's not there. I'll also say alpha testers definitely welcome, because especially figuring out how to make this, the automatic installer may or may not work for every possible way you have JavaScript set up, but I'm actually pretty confident the tool will. I just might have to tell you how to set it up or get your feedback to improve the installer to handle it. So I would love alpha testers to see if you can make it work in your app, especially if you already have an app that already uses an older version of Blacklight range limit plugin. This should work with Rails 7 or 8 once it's out, as well as Blacklight 7 or 8. Probably not anything earlier than that.
All right, yeah, that was my follow-up question, which is what version of Blacklight was it going to run with? So
Yeah, I've intentionally, because for me, I don't want to have to change everything at once. So I want to be, right now I'm on Blacklight 7. I want to be able to move to the new version of the range limit plugin on Blacklight 7, get that working, then update to Blacklight 8. So to meet my own needs doing that, it definitely supports Blacklight 7 and 8, as well as Rails 7.0 and future. It supports all of those to hopefully make your upgrade paths easier.
one final question. Um, so the feature for like having it be interactive, which seems pretty nifty, I think, for that plugin. Is that something that you, for your projects, are interested in doing, or are you dropping that feature? Like, it's not something that you would even need in your
We
own.
are interested in it. I just might use up all of my time budget to work on this before I get to it, because things ended up difficult. But
Got
we're
it.
not interested in it. I just can't commit to having it done.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sure I'm out of time now, so I will stop.
Thank you, Jonathan. I did try to take some notes, so if there's anything in there that needs to be updated, feel free. And I guess reach out to Jonathan if you want to be an alpha tester, etc. Okay, so next up we have Mirador and Blacklight UX accessibility testing. I think this is
Right.
Brittany.
Sorry everyone for the lack of organization in this. I just put it together during the break. So it's just a Google Doc essentially. But I wanted to first say hi. I did forget to say what I do at Sierra Can. So I'm the UX developer essentially. So I do both UX and development. But I already forget what I was talking about. Yeah, so I work on Canadiana.ca, and we're working on replacing our really old Perl code base with Blacklight and ArcLight actually. So as part of this project, we've been working on UX and accessibility studies kind of in waves as we choose software that we're going to be developing. And as we can put out demos for our test users. So over and over again, we'll be running UX and accessibility studies, and this is going to be our process for each. We first start off recruiting participants, then we conduct an accessibility study, analyze the findings during a design sprint. Then through that design sprint, we'll also create the prototype and then conduct a usability study on that, gather more feedback and design again, and then finalize the designs and publish results. So the finalized designs part usually ends up me talking to open source software community members to see what they think, to make sure that what I'm proposing makes sense, and I can kind of lean on the expertise that others in the communities have. And what we do, what I wanted to show was this is the page that we had published, kind of talking about all of the raw data that we have and some generalized recommendations that we could make from the user feedback that we got during both the accessibility and the usability studies. What I did was I shared the supporting research with the community, and then I came up with myself a few of these suggestions, generalized recommendations. Then I asked the IIIF community, can anyone help me with this, or does anyone have any more ideas that they can add based on this research or research that you've done? So it wasn't just me who made these recommendations. Some people from Diderati and NYU helped me out. And that's something that I want to keep doing as we're using open source software. But what I can do is maybe point out 3 of the ones that I think are maybe the most important, or ones that I think I want to surface today. The first one, if I can find it, because I put links to everything, was avoiding deeply nested options in your displays. So for this was one of the main problems that we had encountered with Mirador, actually. So Mirador, if you're familiar with it, it's an image viewer, and it has a lot of like icons, and then when you click the icon, a menu pops up, and then you click the menu item, and then you get to the new feature or the feature that you're looking for. That seemed to be a pain point both for UX and accessibility reasons. So it seemed very important for us to address that. So more information in the thing right there. Then another thing that I had wanted to say was the displaying OCR, which I think is towards the top. No, it's lower. So if you have a text-based representation of your images that you're displaying, or whatever content that you're displaying, if it's videos, text-based representation of your videos, just really make sure that you're displaying that to end users in a convenient way. The best way that I've seen, most users prefer something that is to the the left side of the viewer, because that'll show up first and it'll be easier for them to access. But essentially, like if you have images, which we do, we have book content that's scanned into images, and magazine content, and other stuff like that. We run OCR on it, and then we should display it on the side, essentially, so that people who are relying on screen readers can read through the content of the image. Another interesting one was providing clear navigational aids. So that's kind of like providing a table of contents, or Google Doc outline type UI for your items to make it easier to navigate through. So for an example of this, yeah, we have big newspapers too. So we have big books, big newspapers, big magazines, and all right now, if you do go to our Canadiana.ca portal, you kind of have to guess where everything is, and kind of go through one by one to see the content of it. So if you can, if you have the capacity, this is a really good feature to add to increase the accessibility of your displays. TLDR for this, you can use IIIF ranges for a table of contents, and you can use IIIF annotations to provide outline-like capabilities, because outlines are more kind of concrete and discrete in what they do. So annotations end up being the better mechanism for providing that. Okay, so those were the main 3, but you can see that we have a lot there that you can read through, and maybe take some information if you have suggestions too. Sorry, I can also add your suggestions to here and credit your institution too. So don't be shy. The next section is the supporting research. So if you're actually interested in the studies that we did, here's where you'll find all of the methods and the data that we got from the accessibility testers, and what kind of software they were using and what they deal with. You can see right here that I had to perform a clustering exercise. So what we did was we took, sorry, it's a little buggy. We took the raw data that we had gotten from the accessibility testers, and then we mushed it all together. We found themes so that we could make solutions for whatever problem was being discussed in each of these clusters. And then I think I listed them below. Yeah, I listed these below here. So these are the observations, and then they're the specific feedback that we had related to that observation. You'll find too that we put a breakdown of, oh, I'm raising my hand apparently. Put a breakdown of all the changes that we made based on the observations that we had too. So you can see all of that if you read the report, and then you can have some screenshots of what each step of the workflow that I showed you looked like at the time. Then the other thing that I wanted to touch on was we got to the point here where it was simplified, and this was after UX and accessibility testing. We will add in the OCR content as a side pane as well, since it's one of the most important things that you can do for accessibility. And then I was wondering as well, so we're doing the same things here that we did for Mirador with Blacklight, and we're doing right now we're focusing, like I said, on the facet section with the default facets display. So one thing that we could do is open up the design sprints. If people have the capacity, I could put out a survey. And let me take the workflow again out. I could put out a survey before we do any of these, essentially. Give you guys the data if you do want to participate. So and then you can work with me, I guess, to come up with the solutions. If that's something that the Blacklight community would be down with, I can do that so that it's not like after the fact. I let you guys know what all came out from it. We can all participate in the solutioning if you want. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I had to say. You can see my notes in the Google Doc too, in case I missed anything that I did want to say. And I will mute myself now.
This was great. I could go on for a bit, but do folks have any questions for Brittany or comments?
I had a question. Brittany, when you were doing your demo before, you showed a tool, I think called Maze, that you used for usability testing. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, sure. I can actually open up, it's all anonymized, so you guys won't see anything if I share my screen again. Share screen, share, I have 1,000 tabs open, but it's somewhere in here. My triple UX stuff. I'll just open it up again. Okay, so when you do log into Maze, this is what it looks like, and it's essentially like user testing software. So what you do, it's kind of like Google Analytics. You add a tag onto your website, and then it'll support users going through a bunch of steps that you set up. And you can also do this with Figma diagrams if you do want to do it at that stage of your process too. We ended up just implementing it on our demo website and then getting people to go through it. So yeah, so if I go to the build section, this is what it looks like for me, and you can see it's on right now, so I can't really do too much, but what you do is you go through and you add blocks and steps. You configure what website page you want it to start at, and you add like what you want people to do at that step. And then you tell the software what a successful path looks like. Then essentially you share a link out to you publish it, you share this link out to test users that you've accumulated, and then you can watch the results come in. And you can also, so I have access to this view, but because you have to pay for each seat who has access, like edit access to your studies, I just share this report out with everyone else at my work who is more involved in this side of things. So they watch this and they tell everyone where we're at. One thing I have been having trouble with is that for some reason for this this test, it's not accurately recording automatically what users had a direct success, indirect success, and mission unfinished. So I've been having to watch it myself to see what they've been doing. But for our Mirador test, it did it perfectly. I should probably reach out to support, but there's a couple other software that are like this. I like Maze. It seems easy. But I think I've heard of, it has a yellow design. It's called, I think, uxtesting.com, something similar. They're both really useful though.
Did that answer your question? It answered some of mine that I was thinking of. I will say there are comments on Slack about loving the user-centered design Gitbook and wanting to know more about your design process. And also the fact that the analysis and the summarized findings are really good. Does anyone who asked about the design process, which is Beth, do you want to ask some more, or did that cover some of your question as well?
I think you've covered some of it. We're just starting to figure out. Actually, I think Beth German is on the call. She introduced me to the term design ops. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but you seem to be doing it, maybe? I don't really know what that means.
It
Is that
must
what you're doing?
mean that UX and accessibility is part of the release cycle, I assume. I
Okay.
haven't
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
that term itself, but that's what I would guess.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what
I
we're
love-
trying to do anyways.
I love how it's baked into the process.
This actually came from us having no UX design process. So this one was our first, I think our first test of the process, and it went really well. And sorry, the Mirador one was the first test of the process and it went really well. And this is our second round going through the process. So yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think the ability to sort of iterate over it and to have a very defined path, and then also to be able to see the results coming in, because usability testing sort of the way it can be done, at least, is you've got your tasks written out, but then you're sort of doing a different set of tasks for different projects, and you sort of distributed your work for when you're trying to figure out how to do these things, and having it all in sort of one managed place is interesting. I will say though, do you know of how this system fares when there are either multiple paths of success, or whether whether it's not as well defined, you're in a sort of more experimental stage of the prototype?
Yeah, there is I have been saying indirect success. So in the last Mirador version that we had, there was kind of multiple ways to perform a task, like you said. And then I was putting direct success as the shortest path, like the most optimized, most logical flow that I would choose, having the knowledge of the application itself. And then anything that wasn't the most efficient flow that I had figured out, I would categorize as indirect success. And that to me gave me some indication that maybe the direct success wasn't easy enough to find. But I haven't cataloged, I don't think, 2 direct successes before. But Maze has pretty good documentation on how to use the software and design studies too. So they might have more detailed tutorials that you could follow for more complex applications.
All right, thank you. And Beth German also put a reference in the chat around design ops. I've dropped it into the notes, and I am sorry if I'm not keeping up with everybody's chat and Slack messages. So if I miss something, please feel free to put that in there. Thank you very much. And we can go to the next one, which will require me to scroll up. Blacklight all maps.
Great, thank you. So again, I'm Eben English from Boston Public Library, and I wanted to share a project that I did not personally write, but I've been sort of involved. This project is called Blacklight All Maps. This is a plugin for Blacklight or Geo Blacklight applications that provides a way to view georeferenced maps that have been georeferenced using allmaps.org. So there's a bunch of terms in there. I'm going to try and unpack those. So essentially, georeferencing is referring to the process of taking like a raster image, like a scanned map, usually a historical map, of some location, and then basically correlating pixels in the image with points on a geographic base layer, with the idea of like being able to reference the map, or sometimes it's called warping the map, against that base layer so that you can view the historical map on top of a modern base layer map, or you can create multiple layers of different historical maps or map images or things like that. So you can kind of see some small examples here, and I'll show you a better one in a minute. Allmaps.org is a open source platform for georeferencing maps, and it uses IIIF as the sort of primary way to interact. So this is like a software as a service platform. Although the code is all open source, you could run your own Allmaps server if you wanted to. But essentially, you can basically feed Allmaps a IIIF manifest for like a map image object, or I guess it could be any image, but and then there's an interface where you can basically do the georeferencing process, where you are picking points on the historical map and then associating those points with the corresponding point on a map base layer, the coordinate points. And then Allmaps stores that data as an annotation, like a IIIF annotation, and that's how it makes it accessible through the Allmaps API. Or you can download those annotations and store them in your repository if that's something that you'd rather do. But anyway, it's very committed to IIIF as this sort of information transmission standard, and it also Allmaps also has a viewer library that works with leaflet.js, if you're familiar with that, which is a map JavaScript library to allow you to view the georeferenced image on top of that base layer, which is like kind of like the real payoff of the whole process. So this essentially is a new gem for Blacklight that is just released sort of this spring, and it has some early adoption, but we're definitely looking to get more people using it and making more people aware of it. It's a very similar installation process to a lot of other Blacklight plugins, where you're configuring some pieces in the catalog controller, and then you're setting some Solr fields that are corresponding to different types of data in your index, and then you're sort of off to the races. So I'm going to show you how it works in the front end, because there is already an implementation in production, which is here at the Big Ten Academic Alliance Geo portal. And again, this isn't work that I've done. It's just work that I'm familiar with, roughly. So just using this as a demo. So I believe that this site is aggregating a bunch of different maps and GIS data from various Big Ten institutions. This is a Geo Blacklight instance. I'm just going to do a blank search so I can return everything. And they do have a facet, which is georeferenced via Allmaps plugin. So I'm going to look. I just want to see some things that they actually have georeferenced using Allmaps. And so here's one that is Boston. So let's take a look at that. So basically the Allmaps plugin, or the Blacklight Allmaps plugin, provides this viewer window, which is based on OpenSeaDragon, and just uses the IIIF image API to render the content. And so we've got our sort of typical OpenSeaDragon zoomable viewer. here, but we can also choose to this other tab, which is the georeference map. And so this shows our map content overlaid over a Google Maps base layer. And we can, again, we can kind of zoom in here to the map. And for the tiles load, whoops. Sorry, the scroll feature with my mouse trackpad is a little funky. Let's just zoom out a little bit. Okay, so yes, we're getting some more high resolution tiles here. So the cool thing about this is that you can drag the opacity to view, one layer or the other layer. So this is interesting, right? Because we can see from this map, which was from 1905, there used to be a bunch of water here called South Bay. And if you look at the current base layer, that's all filled in, and now there's a highway on top of it. So, if you're interested in like urban planning or, the history of cities or all kinds of urban wetlands ecology or the history of shipping and docks, dock workers, there's all kinds of potential interests that might be well served by this type of particular thing. So that is sort of like the main feature of this plugin, is that it provides this viewer which allows you to display the map image over that base layer. The installation process, like I said, is fairly straightforward. There's just basically like you want to be able to tell Solar what items are georeferenced, so it knows how to do that facet. And then it also has a sort of like a sidecar database that you can use to store the all maps annotations, so that you're not fetching those in real time via the API, which you could do, but it's probably a lot more performant to store the IIIF annotation as a JSON object in the database. So again, this is a really new project. Definitely welcome, early adopters. If you find bugs, create issues. If you're interested in working on it, it's completely open. So community contributions are very, very welcome. And that is pretty much what I got for this. So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Evan. Does anyone have some questions or comments about that? Super cool. All maps is always so impressive and a great choice for demo. I don't know if people have other comments, but I have a quick, I guess, question. I think one of the interesting things about the plugin is you've got all maps, which is essentially storing all these geographical or georeferencing annotations. And I think as part of the plugin, so you're looking at like the map that's georeferenced. If there's something in your system that's not georeferenced, there's also like a georeference this link, right? So if you wanted to georeference something, then you could, and you go to all maps. And I think one of the questions was, if somebody georeferences something that hasn't already been in your collection, and you're getting these annotations from outside, are you updating the Solar index directly, or because that's kind of funky, or not? And it seems like you're not. You're using a sort of sidecar mechanism, so you're really holding on to those external annotations from all maps. It's not directly like updating your Solar index. You're just using this sort of second set of information in order to drive display and search. Is that about right?
Yeah, and I think that the design, so yeah, you're correct. And so that is one of the features that I didn't mention, is that you can basically choose to show a link in like the show tools section, where, if it hasn't been georeferenced, you can say georeference this map at all maps. And when you click the link, it will automatically send you to all maps and provide the all maps with the IIIF manifest for that item. So you can just kind of jump right into the georeferencing process. So people could be doing that all the time. Like, and ideally, that's the goal, is to have users doing this type of work in a sort of crowdsourced model. And then getting the data back into your index is kind of tricky. Well, it's not necessarily tricky. I mean, it's All Maps has an API that allows you to kind of get that data. But I think that when we were building this, the idea was that everyone has a slightly different way of updating their solar data, and so it doesn't make sense to try and build the functionality for that into this gem. But there is a like a harvesting rake task that you could run as like a cron task that will basically look through everything in your solar index and check it against the All Maps API. So you could run that nightly, and that would give you a list that would update the sidecar database that the or it's not a sidecar database. It's just another table in your existing database. But it would update the records in that table to say, yes, there are like these new maps that are now in All Maps, and then you could write a script to update your solar index based on querying that database and getting the updated data at whatever frequency you wanted to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any others, but do folks have any other questions? If not, we can move on. Doesn't look like it, unless someone's raising their hand or saying something. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Evan. All right, next up we have Blacklight Lando with us.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes,
And can you see my screen?
we can see agenda and notes.
Okay, that's not what we want to look at. There we go. Okay, this is a little thing that I wrote because I teach a lot of getting started with Blacklight workshops, and I have not had great luck with the solar wrapper gem that the getting started with Blacklight page recommends. So on my team, we use this thing called Lando to run Docker containers for local development, and it works really well. So, but what I didn't want to do was walk an entire classroom full of people who are new to a lot of these concepts through like kind of an involved configuration process so that they could have Lando running. So what I did instead was I put all of that configuration into a gem called Blacklight Lando, and you install it. And when you run this generator, it sets you up with a configuration for solar based on all of the Blacklight defaults, and then you just run Lando start. So there's my, I want to also add Postgres in, but I haven't done it yet. That's the next thing. So if I run, can't see anything past my Zoom controls, Lando start, it's going to start it. There you go. And it worked pretty well. Sean, that was the workshop you were in. We all got it up and running.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. All right. That's all. Thank you.
Well, we definitely have time for questions. That was pretty cool. So it does just solar, or is it like
Right now it just does solar. But it configures your application to look, it sets up solar in development and in test, and then it configures your test solar to run against the right version of solar in Docker, and development against that. And yeah, just does all of that for you.
neat?
This is very cool. Is there a way to configure which solar version?
Yeah, that's in the config file.
Cool.
I'll paste it in the notes.
Anyone else? Should we do like a line by line review for 10 minutes, or we could always break early? That is also.
It looks like Justin put something in there.
Oh, good.
There's another.
Yes, I did. Okay, if I go,
Yep, go for it.
I'll share my screen here. I think. Hey, can we see it?
Yep.
Okay, just thought it would be good to recap what's happening for Blacklight 9. Blacklight 9 is something we've started in the main branch of Blacklight by basically changing the version to Blacklight 9 Alpha, and we pushed all of the Blacklight 8 development to a branch, as we're doing with all the other past Blacklights. Timeline for Blacklight 9 is probably sometime toward Q1. So some of the changes that are happening is Bootstrap 4 is going to be removed. Bootstrap 4 is well past its end of life. So Blacklight 9 is using Bootstrap 5 only. Blacklight 7 and 8 both support Bootstrap 4 and 5. So I guess if you're looking toward getting on Blacklight 9, getting toward Bootstrap 5 is a priority for you. As far as Rails goes, we're trying to support the new versions of Rails. So Rails 8 is in beta right now. We've done some work to test Blacklight on Rails 8. That's coming up. The big changes in Rails are different asset pipelines for JavaScript and CSS. So Rails 8 now has PropShaft as their default pipeline instead of sprockets. They also have import map Rails and JS bundling Rails and CSS bundling Rails. And these sort of features were all supported by sprockets in the past. So we're getting rid of sprockets and moving toward these more JavaScript-centric ways of bundling JavaScript and CSS. And Rails has sort of been moving away from build pipelines entirely because there are many features of web browsers that make bundling completely unnecessary now. I mean, nested CSS is something supported in every modern browser. CSS variables are supported in every browser. Import map is supported by every browser. So in order for Blacklight to also be no build, it would be great if it could be Sass optional. Right now, Blacklight says you must compile Sass to CSS before you can deliver the styles. But it would be easier if we didn't have to do that, if we just had a style sheet that worked. So a lot of this work that's going into Blacklight 9 is to make Sass optional. So you're welcome to use Sass if you want to add it to your own app, but we kind of think of it as an extra complication that you don't necessarily need to have. Some minor UI changes are coming up too. It's always hard in a product like Blacklight to understand where to introduce UI changes. It can be challenging for people to upgrade if every minor release as UI changes in it that you have to test, especially if you've done customizations on these UI things. So we kind of avoid doing a lot of UI changes unless they're necessary. So we've sort of stacked up a few UI changes. Again, I don't think it's anything major, but it's much easier to push UI changes off into a major release like that. I just wanted to mention that many of the changes target better accessibility. So things that, we thought were accessible 15 years ago is no longer the case. It's no longer what modern accessibility experts think of as accessible. So some of these things are changing, but we don't want to force them on you in a minor release. So we're just stacking them up to a major release here. Anything else you want? Like I said, this timeline is Q1 next year, so plenty of time. If you want to add some issues or if you want to contribute some code, plenty of time to get stuff in, and now is the best time to do it. But I do need your help at a minimum. There's a whole bunch of pull requests stacked up in this milestone. They all need to be reviewed so we can merge them in and develop them together. The problem with stacking up all these pull requests like this is often when you merge one pull request, you have to rebase all the others. So it's sort of I don't know, a geometric complexity sort of problem of rebasing. So if we can get these in regularly, that would be super helpful and allow people to do testing on some of the new features coming in. That's all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
There's a comment in the chat. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to talk about this at all.
No, I'm happy. Just leave it as a comment in the chat.
Okay.
We can talk about it this afternoon in the JS thing if we talk about JS.
Sounds good.
I have a question, Huda. It's Mike from Penn. After the last presentation and this one, I see also that Rails 8 is looking at SQLite as production ready. And I wonder if Blacklight tends to be pretty light on the database. If we would consider recommending SQLite as part of our trainings or our basic tutorials for setting it up.
Yeah, as far as I go, I would say like we don't want to get into what database you choose. I think we shouldn't prevent you from using whatever you want to use. I'm not sure that SQLite meets our goals for a production ready database just because we want to have like, multiple failover nodes. And I'm not sure that's like a feature set that SQLite has right now or ever will have. But I do think it's, pretty fantastic for dev and test and maybe like a hobby project. So I think it totally depends on, what your needs are for your application. And I'm not sure that Blacklight needs to get into that.
Okay, thanks.
I think it used to come as sort of be one of the out of the box development options. But yeah, I think Mike, your question's different from that, maybe. Any other questions? Anyone want to add a feature right now to the list of milestone PRs? Or not?
Actually, sorry, I have a quick question about Blacklight 9. And I'm still on Blacklight 7, so I'm sorry if I'm completely behind the 8 ball here, but Blacklight 9 is still using view components primarily for front end views.
Yeah, I don't think anything has changed in that regard.
Cool. So it seems like the upgrade from 8 to 9 might be a lot less painful than 7 to 8 if you're already using Bootstrap 5. This is complete conjecture. Painful being a relative term.
Yeah, I think that depends on what your experience has been in the past, I guess. I'm not sure what that is, so I can't comment much on it.
Well, I think probably on the view component side, like you said, it will be, if you've already, from 7 to 8, if you've already done the view component, translation or whatever, transformation, and you're using Bootstrap 5, then you have at least fewer things to also do going to 9. I think. All right, we have 4 minutes left, but if you have questions.
Can you I have a question. Can you
Sure.
clarify when you said that you're switching to prefer prop shaft, were you talking about Rails or were you talking about Blacklight?
Rails 8 defaults to prop shaft. It does not have sprockets anymore. So I think we would prefer that everybody have one way of doing things, and we're not trying to support old stuff as well.
And so will you be preferring prop shaft then, since that's the Rails default?
Yep.
Okay.
Dante, I will read this question out just because you put it in chat, and it does seem like it's relevant. At the moment, I'm not sure there are any known backwards incompatible things from 8 to 9, except dropping Bootstrap 4, unless more could arise before a 9 release. And then Justin answered in chat, 7.1 and 7.2, not 7. Okay, never mind. Are
Oh,
we
yeah,
done?
Also dropping some really old Rails versions, or some not so, but some old Rails. It drops some old Rails versions of Bootstrap 4. Right now, I think the upgrade from the last version of 8 to 9 should be fairly straightforward. There aren't any major known incompatibilities I know about, but some could arise before it gets released. I don't know if Justin was suggesting it would drop support for sprockets before it gets released. I'm not sure.
I'm merely stating my preference.